Hello and welcome to this festive edition of Big Finish Reviews. Today I'm going to be looking at what many consider to be one of the best releases Big Finish has ever given us. Rob Shearman's classic story, The Chimes of Midnight. Not only one of their best releases, but it's also considered to be probably the best Christmas special Doctor Who's ever had, including all the stuff we've had in the TV series, and regardless of what I think of the story going forward, I definitely have to agree with that factor. But before I share my thoughts on the episode as a whole, I'd just like to say, if you haven't already, I would deeply appreciate it if you supported the channel by hitting subscribe and turning on notifications. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like and comment your thoughts on Chimes of Midnight below, and you can find and follow me on Twitter at the link here. I'm going to keep this review relatively spoiler free, as this really is the kind of story that's worth going in not knowing too much about what occurs. But chances are, if you've listened to any Big Finish, it's probably this one. Chimes of Midnight sees the 8th Doctor and Charlie arriving in an Edwardian household on Christmas Eve, where they are forced to become amateur detectives and try and solve a series of murders. That's as much as I'll say about the plot, as going any further would spoil a lot of the events that occur, but I will say, for a very basic storyline, Rob Shearman does a great job of making it really interesting, as it's far more than just a traditional murder mystery, as there is very much a sci-fi twist that turns everything on its head. Put simply, it's a murder mystery where everything is not as it seems.
I assume, Doctor, we can safely conclude it was suicide?
Suicide? The poor unfortunate. She was such an unhappy child.
In fact, it is extraordinarily difficult to drown yourself standing up with your head in a sink. As soon as the body loses consciousness, she'd have passed out and fallen, pulling her head out of the water.
Oh, don't he talk posh with all his scientific terms, don't he, Frederick? Losing consciousness, indeed.
After the decent and otherwise mediocre first season with the 8th Doctor and Charlie that helped to ease people in, by the time we reached series 2, they very much hit their stride with writing this dynamic, and this is the start of the stories getting really, really good. Yeah, I have no real hot takes or negative thoughts on this particular story. It's a very much, I have the traditional view that this is definitely a really good story. I don't want to oversell it too much, as I might end up making it seem a little overhyped for some people, so don't go in with too high expectations, just go in and see what you think of it. Paul McGann and India Fisher had very much settled into their roles by this point and have fantastic chemistry.
I've been too methodical recently, I think, setting coordinates and things, actually deciding where we want to go. I've been getting far too safe and predictable these last few incarnations. Do you know, I once travelled for centuries without ever knowing where I'd materialise next.
Yes, I can believe that. However, you were supposed to be getting me to Singapore, you know. 1930, remember?
Yes, well, the TARDIS seems to be avoiding that precise location or time just now. We'll get there later, Charlie. I thought it was time we put a bit more mystery in our lives. Let the TARDIS take us where she wants, and let us revel in the giddy thrill of our ignorance.
Like with most Rob Shearman stories, Chimes of Midnight shifts between different tones and emotions, so quite a lot of the time you're not sure how to feel. Sometimes it's really funny, sometimes it's really disturbing. Sometimes it's both at once, and you don't know whether you're supposed to be scared or laughing.
Well, Edith was a very stupid girl, Doctor. She may not have known it was impossible when she did it.
She certainly wasn't the sharpest tool in the box.
That's your answer, Doctor. Mrs. Baddeley has it. Edith was so simple-minded that she didn't realise she couldn't drown herself in the sink, and so she did.
He really gets the dynamic of the 8th Doctor and Charlie.
But we're agreed it's Christmas then.
Oh, yes.
The question is, have we missed the day itself? See if you can find a turkey anywhere.
Turkey hunting. Aha! I've hunted the turkey. Already cooked and waiting to be eaten.
Christmas Eve, then. The kitchen should be buzzing with action.
So where is everybody?
Which is why Shearman was brought back to write the just as iconic Scherzo for the following season. This story, while it acts as a major cornerstone in the overarching plot for Charlie, it is very much a standalone story at the same time, and that is not an easy task, and you can listen to the story without context. Maybe listen to Storm Warning first, but otherwise you don't really need to listen to Series 1 to enjoy this story. An interesting element of Chimes, outside of the main plot and our two leads, is its focus on the theme of social constructs and identity, as we focus on the staff of the Edwardian household, with the Lord and Lady of the house being a background presence. We never see them, but their presence is always felt, and we get to see how the staff look down on each other as well as themselves, and the feeling of self-doubt is a recurring motif for the staff, and it's up to the Doctor and Charlie to try and disprove this notion and make them feel good about themselves.
I'm sorry, Mr. Shaughnessy. It's Christmas, isn't it? I always love a bit of Christmas, me.
Whatever the reason, it hardly explains or excuses your caterwauling.
I'm sorry, sir.
I wouldn't be surprised if his lordship himself could hear it upstairs. We can be thankful at least that you weren't saying Silent Night. The irony would have been too much to bear.
What about upstairs?
Upstairs, Doctor?
Yes, who is upstairs?
Well, his lordship and her ladyship.
And what are they like?
Oh, I don't discuss them, sir. It's not my place.
Are either of them remotely homicidal at all?
Oh, it's not my place.
Perhaps one of them is conducting dangerous time experiments. Have you seen any weird futuristic-looking equipment lying about when you serve morning tea?
It's not my place. We are nothing. We are nobody.
I beg your pardon?
We are nobody. Only in service do we derive any meaning or purpose. We serve. That is our function.
If you're a fan of classic British period dramas like Downton Abbey or Upstairs Downstairs, then I definitely recommend this story, as the characterization and setup of the staff characters very much will put you in mind of those programs. And there's not really much more I can say, as for the most part I just conform to the general opinion that this is a fantastic story and I really enjoy it. Every time I listen to it, it continues to be entertaining. It just gets better every time I listen to it. It's an incredibly inventive, clever story, and a must-listen around the festive period. Even though it's a bit dark some of the times, more so than the otherwise light and fluffy TV Christmas specials, it is still very enjoyable. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review, and I'll see you in the new year, where I continue with the rest of the 8th Doctor Adventures Series 2. Yes, I'll be coming back to Invaders of Mars. I know that should have come first, but I think more people were interested in my thoughts on Chimes of Midnight. So I'll see you then.